Professor Hengel, in recent years, some authors have suggested that the 4 New Testament Gospels were only popular, or they only gained their authority many centuries after Christ, and for political reasons. Is there any evidence for that?
Not at all. This is all inventions. It isn't true. The Gospels became important for Christianity already shortly after the time they have been written in the 2nd century. In the first who knows the 4th Gospel altogether is Irenaeus, about 180, but he takes over this tradition from Asia Minor, from an earlier time. We have quite a lot of Gospel testimonies from the beginning of the 2nd century, and especially since Justin in the midst, the Apologete, where knows them all, and the same is true with Irenaeus and his the other writers of his time, like Tertullian and like Clement of Alexandria and Theophilus of Antioch, and I think all over the Roman Empire at the end of the 2nd century, the Gospels were well known to Christian communities. And there was no political reason at that time, up to 311, the Edict of Tolerance by Emperor Galerius, the Christian communities were persecuted sometimes, and were in they had not under Roman law. They were free to decide what they want to have read in service and what not. The most important source for the early reading of the Gospels, especially the Gospels in the Christian servants, in the Christian service, is about 150 by Justin, where he is writing that the Christians are coming together for the service, for a meeting, and where the prayers were told, and then were read first the Gospels or the scriptures of the prophets, and then came all again, and there was a sermon, an exegesis of the text which was read, and then against prayers, and then came the Eucharist. And the text which is written for the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius, to show that the Christians are no criminals, shows that this tradition of the reading of the Gospels, Justin speaks of memories of the apostles, apomneumataton apostolon, where this is was in use already since long time, in my opinion, since the end of the 1st century, as in the communities here in Rome, but the same in Asia Minor and probably also in Syria and Alexandria.
So the idea that there were perhaps 50 different Gospels and our 4 Gospels of the New Testament were just lucky to win the day, that's nonsense. That's what you're saying, is it?
There were, of course, later Gospels, apocryphal Gospels, quite a lot, and many have found, but the 4 Gospels we have are the earliest witnesses we possess, and there are not earlier Gospels. We have older sources. Already Luke is mentioning sources he used and sources from eyewitnesses, but we have no older and better Gospels than the 4 we have, which are already in use in Justin in the midst of the 2nd century, and quite clearly in Irenaeus. Already Justin writes in his dialogue with Trypho that the apostles, that the memories of the apostles are written by the apostles themselves, or by followers of the Gospels, or by followers of the apostles. And this shows already the apostles are for Justin, John, Matthew and John, and the followers are Mark and Luke.
This leads to the next question I wanted to ask you. Some have said that the Gospels were originally anonymous and that the names Matthew, Mark, Luke and John were added to lend them weight.
This is quite improbable. First, the Gospels were written all for the open reading in the Christian service, in the worship, and therefore the people who are hearing, the most are unliteral, they couldn't read, and therefore the text was read aloud just now in our services. The people must know what text is read. The same is true with the Old Testament text. They all have, the Old Testament books all has titles. Either with the author, like in the book of the prophets, or Moses was thought to be the author of the first books, of the first 5 books of the Bible, or a book of contents, maybe the Psalms, or the wisdom of Solomon, like that. And so from the beginning it was necessary, because for the use and the service, that the gospel had titles. This is one first important reason. And we know from Justin that the people knew who the authors of the gospels are. And the second point is that if the gospels were written anonymously, then later they had put the title upon it. The question is, who has invented this title? There was no uniformity at that time in the church, and if there were anonymous gospels in the different communities, there should have been different titles. But the titles are all the same. From I think at the end of the 2nd century, they are identical with Irenaeus in Lyon, and with Clement in Alexandria, and with Theophil and Serapion in Antioch, and of course in Rome, and with Tertullian in Carthage in Africa. I think the titles were intended.
Can I ask, why were these 4 Gospels so important to the first Christians?
Because they were the main, the unique source for the deeds and the words of Jesus and his passion, because they brought Jesus to the first Christians. I think, and they were containing the witness of the witnesses of the I think, and the memories. They contain the memories of the first witnesses, the Peter and other apostles, and also not important not to forget some women.